You know, technology is funny. It loses tremendous value very rapidly. My best advice is to sell your technology before it loses, conceivably, all value. At some point in time, these chips held some really good value, and now they're basically worthless. They will simply end up in a landfill or be recycled for their raw materials. Or in my case, they may end up simply as garden gnomes. Now everybody uses their computer for a different reason. You may use your computer to watch yoga videos or do online banking. Possibly you're a gamer. Maybe you do gaming and live streaming. It's hard to say. But there's a small group of us, a small community, who enjoys using our computer for overclocking. And today we're going to be talking about myself in Canada. So what we got set up here is my overclocking rig. This is my new CPU cooler. We got her going right into the window there. So today we're going to be looking at overclocking a 8700K on this unit. It's roughly -10, -12 outside here in Canada. It's pretty cold. So we got her rigged up there and we're basically ready to rock and roll. So stay tuned. Hope you enjoy this video, and let's have a look at a $500 chip that will someday be worth nothing. Alright, well, let's get right into her and start with the water cooling loop. So I'm using windshield wiper fluid in my loop. This stuff works excellent for sub-ambient overclocking. Definitely is good down to -35 out here in Canada. I can confirm that. It does not gel, it does not freeze, and it does not generate any mold or biofilm. So that's absolutely excellent. I really enjoy using this stuff, and it's like $2.99 a bottle, so that's excellent. In front of that, your pretty standard 110 volt fan header. That's how I power the two fan banks outside, two 1080 millimeter fan banks in the push-pull configuration. We got your pretty standard water cooling setup here, the Swiftech pump and reservoir combination that helps me prime the loop, having it so close. Like that, so that's pretty awesome. And I've got a couple disconnects here, so I can easily disconnect the loop and pull the cooling unit inside. So I've used a compressor disconnect. That's from a compressor tool 3/8 fittings on the bottom, and it's a coolant quick disconnect on the top. So let's have a look at the test bench setup here. We've got our Intel SSD Asus motherboard box for a test bench, and Asus Maximus Apex upon the test bench. This board, a bit of a love-hate relationship with it. We'll get right into it in a second. We've got the 8700K installed in the board, and Gskill tridentZ memory, 3600 megahertz stock, and this RAM is pretty decent RAM for overclocking as well. And got the Silverstone 1200 watt power supply powering the whole rig. So let's get right into the board. Basically not a fan of the LEDs. Please save me $50 or whatever it is and just omit them from the board for overclocking. Also, my board, it might just be my particular board, has coil whine while I'm running the Intel XTU benchmark, so hopefully you guys will get a taste of that. This board does not have the traditional Asus ROG Connect, and that is a tool that I really enjoy, and I wish it had that feature on the board. So this is what a good overclocking board should look like. It should be MATX form factor. not this EATX trimmed down design. It should have just 2 memory slots and all the features you need and nothing you don't need. Inside the board, this particular board, I've got a pretty golden 7600K, which is indistinguishable by the camera, but it is a 7600K and it is a golden one. It does, I think, 5.5 at like 1.5 volts on water cooling, or 5.6. So it's a pretty nice chip. So let's have a look at where we're sitting right now in Canada. I'm currently sitting at 3rd place on the hardware bot leaderboards, and you got to represent your country, right? Although we're not looking to push any records today, I do enjoy overclocking and participating in the community. And we're looking at -13 for our weather today. So let's get over to our overclocking rig here. Got our Lego tripod that's infamous, and get you guys set up. All right, it's looking good. So what we've done here is just loaded into Windows at stock settings, basically. So hopefully you can see everything okay. I'm not too sure. You can see my setup, it's not too good. So let's run a Cinebench, get a baseline score, see how well we can improve that with the water cooling setup, and just see how the motherboard behaves at stock settings. So let's observe our frequencies and voltages here. Now I'm going to start the video just by saying that CPU-Z, at least this version 1.82.0, is very accurate for the voltage. I've measured with a digital multimeter and it's very accurate, and when CPU-Z refreshes and gives you a voltage, it's very accurate with the multimeter. Now Asus AI Suite, which we're going to bring up when we start overclocking, it also represents the voltage very accurately. However, I find that it does not refresh as quick. So instead of me talking, let's just run a stock Cinebench here and see what our baseline is and observe our frequencies. So on this board, basically stock settings, I'm getting 4.3 on all of the cores, and our voltage is 1.2 volts. So we're basically just going to run a stock Cinebench, a stock Intel XTU, and see how we can improve upon that. So your results may vary. Please share your stock settings in the comments below. So our stock Cinebench was 1411. And I'm just running this once really quickly, okay? Normally I'd like to run the benchmark a couple times. Now it's also a good idea to run Intel XTU, and mostly just to see where your CPU temperature is at. So you can see we're idling at 0 right now, but this will help you determine if your voltage is okay. Now AI Suite also reports the temperature, but basically if you can run Intel XTU at X voltage, you're going to be able to run all of your multi-threaded programs at that voltage as well. And I'm just talking extreme overclocking, benchmarking. Don't try this for a typical daily setting, because none of this stuff will be good. I'll talk about some stuff that I think you should consider for just daily settings, but that's basically it. So our stock Intel XTU score was 2370 and our maximum temperature was 25C. All right, So let's get into the BIOS now. We're just going to shut her down, restart, go into the BIOS, set our overclocks. I'm going to touch upon a couple important things in the BIOS that I feel are pretty important with the board anyways. So number one thing that I should talk about is the load line calibration. Now, Tiny Tom talks about this on a couple boards. I think in the stryx lineup. I can't recall his comment on this board, but I'll tell you what I've experienced. The load line calibration on this board out of the box is pretty horrible. If you set the voltage, let's say for 1.5 volts, under load, I'm observing 1.4 volts under stock without touching the load line calibration. So what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to load up a profile that I've got set here for 5.1 gigahertz and everything's set properly. So I've got my profile loaded up. Number one, make sure under your CPU configuration, this is both for overclocking and just for normal everyday use. Make sure that all your settings here are set for enabled. So your speed step, turbo, C state set for auto is good, and the speed shift technology for enabled. Basically, I found that this has yielded the best performance overall, and it also allows your CPU to idle at 800 megahertz when it's not under load. So I suggest making sure this is all enabled, whether you're overclocking or not. And basically, let me just show you how I'm set up here. We're basically got all cores at 5.1 gigahertz. Memory is set for 3900 megahertz. Show you the timing really quickly, just the primary timings. 12, 12, 28, 1T. Now with the load line calibration, my best suggestion for this board, whether you're overclocking or just doing, you know, a normal 24/7 overclock, is set the load line calibration for level 6 and then set your voltage for 0.2 volts, sorry, 0.02 volts under the voltage in which you desire. In my case, basically I've got it set for 1.48 and my target voltage is 1.5 under load. Basically, with the load line calibration on this particular board, anything below 5 will undervolt, and anything over 5, so 6 and above, will overvolt. So what I found is level 6 overvolts by 0.02 millivolts, and in order for me to get that 1.5 volts, I set this for 1.48 load line calibration for level 6, and I'm good to go. So that's how I would suggest tuning this board in a normal fashion. So you can see we're running some pretty decent voltages on our I/O, SA, memory, and they don't probably need to be that high, but that's just how I roll. And that's how it's basically set up. So hopefully some of that information helps you guys while you're overclocking the board. So the last thing I want to talk about is the cache. Now, so far by default, if I try to run my cache at a 1-to-1 value through the BIOS, it automatically underclocks it by 300 megahertz in the operating system. And the only way that I've been able to get a 1-to-1 ratio on the cache is by using the Asus AI Suite Tuner, which I'll show you, and that's the only way that I've been able to adjust it. Otherwise, the board will automatically leave it at 300 megahertz below what you've set the max value for. So hopefully that helps. Let's save our settings here and boot into the operating system and see how much we improve that Cinebench score and our XTU score. So I like this board overall. I would recommend it. It is a good board. Well, actually, it's kind of one of the only boards for, doing this type of overclocking that's decent right now. It would be nice to see ASRock release another little micro board that can do the same thing. Or even, if there was some kind of geek out there who could tune the BIOS for this 8th generation stuff on the Z170 platform, that would be excellent. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is just go into the Intel Extreme Tuning utility. We're basically running 1.5 volts now and see what kind of temperatures we're rocking. So we'll just set this over here and this over here. So we're basically rocking, we can see here 5.1 gigahertz, 5.1 gigahertz, 1.5 volts it's peaking up to, and our max temperature is 58 degrees. Now, please keep in mind I did delid this CPUs. My delid tool is a razor blade. I don't recommend delidding your chip, but I enjoy delidding it, so if you want to, go ahead. So we've gone from 2370 to 2841. That was an improvement of 500 points just by going to 5.1 gigahertz. We're not going to run too much XTU, but I just wanted to observe our maximum temperature, which was 62C. So next we'll run our Cinebench. And observe 5.1 gigahertz, 1.5 volts, and our memory is basically at our 3900 megahertz, and that's all timed properly. And if you look at our cache frequency, it's only hitting 4.8 gigahertz. So let's do that first. Let's go ahead, open AI Suite 3. I don't like this software, it's just a little bloated, but it does allow you to tune from the operating system. So first thing I would suggest is hit this group tuning button so you sync all cores with everything that you're doing. And we'll just go to, we'll keep our core at 5.1 and we will actually set our cache for 5.1 through AI Suite. Now hopefully when we run the benchmark now, no, it didn't actually change. So let's go ahead and just put both. I think because I didn't change the multiplier from what it was thinking it was. So now you can see basically it's changed to 5.2. I changed each to 5.2 and our CPU will turbo up to 5.2 as well. So let's just go ahead and rerun that at 5.2. So 5.2 on the core, 1.5 volts, 5.2 on the cache, and 3900 megahertz on the memory. So far that's the only way I've been able to tune the cache on this platform is through the OS. And just that right off the bat, 1737. So we gained 320 Cinebench points or whatever the heck it was, just in Cinebench. And that makes it a significant improvement if you're even just to run this chip at 4.9 or 5 gigahertz from what the 4.3 turbos on stock. So this is just going to be a quick overclocking video, see what we can get out of it at 1.5 volts. I know for a fact that this chip does not like much more than this 5.3 on the cache. So we're going to set it for 5.3, see if it runs, see if it crashes. So that time, for some reason, the settings did not apply. The cache applied, but the CPU did not apply. So I don't think the score will be any higher. I think it'll be worse than 1737. 1736, all right. I don't know why I'm keep closing it, but that's just the way I'm doing it today. So what I'll do is just change this to 51, then I'll go to 53. Hopefully this applies. I wish this gave me the true multiplier on CPU-Z, but it does not. Okay, there we go. Now we're rocking 5.3 gigahertz. So we can see here, our cache is also at 5.3, 3900 megahertz on the memory. See if the benchmark completes. So far I've been able to get 5.4 out of this chip, but it's been a little colder. So that was a 1765. Okay, let's see if we can go right for 5.4. So we know our temps right now, we're probably around 62C at max, so we don't have to worry about that. Rocking 1.5 volts. Our settings did not apply, so we will have to try it again at 5.4. There we go. So we're 5.4 gigahertz. It's what we're getting out of the 8700K. Our next step logically would be 5.5, 55 on the multiplier, but this chip unfortunately just will not do it. We're going to try it. We're going to blue screen to death. But right before that, let's see if we can run the Intel XTU benchmark at 5.4. So 1796 is a pretty good score. So do we blue screen to death on Cinebench at 5.5 or do the Intel XTU? Now XTU does not like the cache at 5.3. It starts tarting out. So I drop it down to 5.1 for Intel XTU, and that time it applied. So let's open up Intel XTU, see if it'll run at 5.4. There's a good chance it won't run. We might just blue screen to death. And I'll try to get you guys to hear the coil whine, but no guarantees that that's going to happen. Wow. That didn't run at all. I can run it at 5.4, but my chip's got to be a lot cooler than what it is. So there you go, blue screen of death. Alright, well, thanks for sticking with me through this video, and thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Like, subscribe. do all that fun YouTube stuff, and hopefully I can catch you with 7600K and you enjoy that as well. Peace.